Over the last few months, here at CMA, we have tested some of the best headphone systems the industry has to offer. Sennheiser HE-1 Orpheus, Warwick Acoustics Aperio, Shangri-La-sr. Those are electrostatics. We have also reviewed some of the best planars in the world, the HIFIMAN Susvara, the AB1266TC, LCD5, etc. What about dynamic headphones? We have certainly reviewed some of the most notorious, Focal Utopia, Atrium, Verite. Are these the best? Is there one that rules them all? Well, with special thank you to Mo, one of our long-time viewers and a massive supporter of the channel, today Convince Me Audio brings you the review of the Spirit Torino Valkyria. Let's discuss. The Spirit Torino Valkyria is a passion project from Italy. This headphone was designed with no limitations in mind in regards to material, cost, technology limits, and most importantly, price point. There was one focus behind the project, and that was musicality, performance, and a subjective preference to the best in regards to a specific set of genres. Have they succeeded? Well, let's have a look. So you pay an astronomical amount, so it seems on the outset, of 12,000. This is the Spirit Torino Valkyria, provided to you in a huge crate, first of all, that weighs over 20 kilograms, and inside that you get this beautiful artful designed box, magnetic clasp. As we gently open this, the inline of the box is layered with foam, and let us take the headphones out. Piece of foam to keep the headphones protected. This beautiful wooden box is something that can be carried or stored very, very nicely. It's very well designed, magnetically clasping, obviously. And be careful, because this thing, I wish it held its position like this, but it doesn't. So the last time Mo was here, it did this. And I was terrified. I thought we'd damage the headphones. But fortunately, the lid of the headphones does not touch the titanium design of the headphones, and it's safe. So these are the headphones themselves. Here is the first pitfall for a lot of people. This 16-core pure silver wire per side with a oxygen-free copper core combining a 36-strand construction is non-detachable. We have a Verite 4-pin XLR, but this can also be terminated in dual 3-pin XLRs for their own amplifier, the Sigphrid back there, or 4-pin XLR. That amplifier, which we will get onto the review at some point, has dual 3-pin and dual 4-pin XLRs for 2 headphones, in case you're fortunate enough to own 2 of these headphones. Now, the cable is beautiful, but it does keep its shape. As you can see, you've got these wavy loops where it was tangled in the box, and it does not maintain a straight shape like this unless you leave it out. So every time you put it back in the box, be careful. This will actually happen, as you can see. But the cable itself is incredible construction, beautifully designed, non-audiophonic, and look at that Verite connection. It's absolutely gorgeous. So we've got to be careful by looping this gently and placing it over there so we can have a look at the headphones. I'm going to place this here like this. We also have Mo's 6.3 to 4-pin female XLR, but that one is a third party. We don't need that right now. This is the Valkyria themselves, a dynamic headphone with proprietary technology throughout, using their own ISO brake dual system and their own turret twin pulse motor design. Within the driver, there are 10 specific neodymium magnets, carefully selected, symmetrically placed so that all of the magnetic field concentrates on the voice coil. And this headphone is 64 ohm and 90 dB sensitivity, so it's pretty hard to drive. This is not something that you're going to use on a DAP, and the headphones themselves weighs a lot. So this is heavier, honestly, than the LCD 4 OG. It feels as though this thing weighs 650 to 700 grams. I don't think it's a gram less. I could not find the exact measurement. I will place it on the screen right here now. Alcantara leather is used throughout. Level 5 titanium grade metal is used for this beautiful, artful design. This titanium shell design is not just for looks. It's actually for the housing and for the sonic characteristics of the headphones themselves. The cups are non-detachable. They're Alcantara and this beautiful material design so that it breathes. It's perforated, and you got quite a large amount of space within the cups themselves for even large ears. These sit very nicely on the head. The headband is constructed of this thick leather with this beautiful etched padding underneath in little sections, the way ZMF headphones are, but not quite as prominent, I would say. This is something that's really fascinating. Look at the construction of these rods in the same manner as ZMF and Audeze, etc. But they are so thin. I think they're like 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter thick. I'm just guessing here, but it's like a thin piece of wire. And yet these enormous, heavy twin pulse motor design magnets drivers are hanging off of them, and they never slide out of place. It's absolutely shocking. Within the housing, the silver wires are soldered onto the board internally. This is apparently to drive efficiency and for the best method of transport for the signal. Though personally I contest this. I think attached wires, especially for headphones of a caliber like this, is not a good idea personally. It's lucky that the quality of the cable is absolutely outstanding, but obviously longevity is a thing. I mean, if you're paying 12,000, that's a very, very large amount of money. That's the same amount as a car for a lot of people. So I genuinely think this should have been detachable. But I'm sure if you can afford a Valkyria, you are really not considering the price. But bear that in mind, it's an attached cable. So make sure the termination you get is what you're looking for. Otherwise, you're going to be dealing with adapters constantly. So this is the headphone. Look at that beautiful titanium design. These units are hand-built in Italy. They are custom ordered. You can't buy it off the shelf. So when you place your order, expect to wait for it for quite a while. Only a handful gets made a year, and there's only a couple of dozen throughout the entire world. We are very, very fortunate to get this. When I saw this at CanJam London last year, I was absolutely mesmerized. So I spent the entire year trying to get hold of these for review, and now we've had Aperio, Shangri-La, HE-1 and Valkyria all in the span of 2 months. I think I'm getting so spoiled and just so grateful to you guys, honestly, our viewers, and most importantly, for those of you who send units such as these in for review. It's very much appreciated. That's the headphone. Let's talk about comfort. As to be expected, these headphones are comfortable, but they're not something you're going to wear all day. I can only do about an hour, hour and a half tops. Some people can put up with the LCD4 for 4 to 8 hours. You shouldn't have any problems. For those of us who do have problems with such weights, for me, an hour and a half is my limit. It's way too heavy. It weighs the head down. It weighs the headphones down. It weighs everything down. But it's still comfortable with it. It's not an uncomfortable weight, but it is a significant weight. Bear that in mind. The pads breathe very, very well. They do not get hot or sweaty. And there's a presence of spaciousness within the cups when these are on your head. But to be fair, when music starts playing, it's a whole different story. So let's talk about how we reviewed this unit and what equipment was used. For the Valkyrias, we used the Sigphrid partnering amplifier from Spirit Torino themselves back there. I used the LTA Z10E and the Warwick Acoustics Aperio as a DAC and pre over there, the HoloAudio Bliss, and the Rockna WaveDream. The apps that were used was Audiovana and Rune and HQ Player respectively. Let's get into the sound. The Spirit Torino Valkyria is not a headphone that you can say is your one and only headphone unless you listen to classical, real instruments, and metal. It was specifically tuned for these genres. This is the passion project of the designer. These are the types of music they showcased at CanJam London last year, and this is exactly what it's tuned for. Don't get me wrong. You can play electronic music on this. You can play hip hop on this. And you can play pop music on this. But you will be skipping songs every 5 tracks. And I'm being generous. Why? The headphones themselves, first of all, we will understand by breaking the frequency response of these headphones down audibly. Let's take a track from Alter Bridge, Blackbird, the album. I'm going to link all the music I mention in this review down below so that you can check them out yourself and know what I'm talking about. Metal. The headphone seems to be rolling off around 30 Hz, maybe higher, 35 Hz. Sometimes I can swear at 40 Hz. But this can be deceiving for genres like classical when double bass kicks in, because all the nuance of the sub bass of double bass cello is articulated and very well defined, and it's there. The highlights of these headphones is textural information, mid-range, tonal balance, and weight. Frequency response is very hit and miss. So if you are an avid reader of frequency response and measurements, I think this headphone is not for you, because it doesn't seem to be following any conventional sense in regards to measurements. So we have this huge roll-off here in the sub-bass region, where electronic music feels as though somebody has disconnected the sub-bass. But in saying that, when it comes to classical music, all the sub-bass for some of those instruments, wood, string for example, is all there. They never roll off. They're very full sounding, huge, bottomless, cavernous in a very good way, where the resonances of the vocal box of that wood instrument is very well announced. The decay is absolutely superb, highly realistic, highly rich. So it's very, very genre specific and genre bound. As we climb up to the mid bass, there seems to be a huge spike here. Now, for certain genres like hip hop and R&B and EDM, this can either overly bleed into the mids and sound like somebody's kicking a cardboard box, because the weight and density seems to be in the lower region of the mid bass, not the upper mid bass, and it seems a bit forward. But yet, when we come back to actual kick drums itself, which are very dead sounding due to the blanket that is stuffed inside the drum skin, and there isn't much decay there, it's absolutely superb. The impact and visceral attack of Valkyria is got to be heard to be believed. It's the most incisive, punchy, aggressive headphone I think on the market. When you listen to metal and when you listen to vocals and stringed instruments and mid-range centric instruments, I'm telling you, Aperio over there looks over its shoulder and goes, I better pick up the pace because Valkyria is coming. It's one of the most seductive sounds you will hear for these specific genres. But it can go from that to genuinely, I think these headphones are broken. So as we climb up to the upper bass region, this is where things can sound thin on the wrong genre of music. Example, pop, EDM, etc. But again, for classical, for strings, for wood instruments, for drum skins, for tom-toms, absolutely incisive, superb, very well articulated. Textural information is so rich on this headphone, is insane. As we climb up to the mid-range, this is where vocals for male and female, this is where electric guitars, acoustic guitars, violins all reside. And it's the most seductive mid-range of any headphone I have ever heard. And I'm going to put Shangri-La there. I am going to put Aperio there in the conversation, and I'm going to put HE-1 there. I will do a side-by-side comparison for you in a moment. It's highly seductive, it's highly realistic, it's tonally dense, extremely weighty, has serious presence. Every image feels as though you can reach out and grab it. It feels as though not only are you looking through a crystal clear window, but you're in the room with the session singers and with the artists and with the instruments. I can't get over how drums sound on this. I can't get over how electric guitars for metal sounds on this. It's absolutely encompassing and enthralling. Treble region rolls off, it's very smooth, but below the treble region in the upper mid-range, for those genres that doesn't work with it, feels as though somebody's taken the slider on the mixing desk and has gone yoink and pushed the sliders all the way down. There doesn't seem to be any upper mid-range there for these genres, and yet for those genres that it does work with, it's perfectly balanced. Somebody described these headphones as all over the place. I think I understand the analogy where it's coming from, because the frequency response does not coherently align itself consistently to a lot of things. But for those things it's good at, it's the best in the world. Where dynamic headphones are concerned, this, without a doubt, is the best dynamic headphones in the world for what it's good at. It's untouchable. It makes Utopia shrink. It makes every other dynamic headphone I have ever heard sound like a toy, like it's pretending. If you are somebody who loves textural information, detail retrieval, tonal balance, weight, and you love metal, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, female vocals, male vocals, and classical music, this should be the pinnacle of your purchase. It's divine, absolutely divine, with huge caveats. Because it goes from sounding broken, not that it doesn't vaguely work, no, it goes to unlistenable. I do not enjoy pop music, hip hop, and EDM. Obviously you're going to get occasional tracks, it's not for every track under the sun, but you will get occasional tracks where it shines just as much as the classical and just as much as the metal. But majority of the time these genres don't work. This is not designed for that. This headphone wasn't tuned for that. You need to have a refined taste. I don't know where metal comes in, where classical is concerned and opera is concerned. This is utterly outstanding and unbelievable. It's just mesmerizing. But maybe on those weekends when things go wild, that's when you play metal music. And oh my god, it's unbelievable. Listening to some of the tracks from Billie Eilish, vocals are absolutely beautiful, texturally rich, and it feels as though she's talking into the microphone, but you're in the room with her while she's talking into the microphone and you're hearing her through the monitors. That's how it sounds. It's highly realistic. And every nuance of her voice, every articulation of the lips, textural information, and crackle and nuances of the vocal cords comes through in the most realistic manner I have heard in a dynamic headphone. But I think what really does set this headphone apart is the weight. Everything is just heavy. Very heavy. Very dense. Very, very, very heavy. Did I mention heavy? Oh yeah, it sounds very, very heavy. There's no airiness and etherealness and thinness to anything where these headphones are concerned. Absolutely divine. Let's talk about some equipment pairing. The Valkyria shines on tubes, like a lot of things do. But where solid state is concerned, so for example the Sigphrid back there, it is tuned slightly warm, so that the mid-range is highly, highly rich. I wouldn't say analytical or reference. That's not the sort of soundscape we're going for. We're going for realism, organic, spacious, extremely spacious. And this is where imaging comes in. This headphone does not just image laterally, left to right, forward and back, up and down, but it images in such a holographic way you can precisely see from a live production if an acoustic guitar, bass, singer, drummer were set in front of you in a private show specifically for you, you can almost see how the entire band position themselves on the stage. Things tend to feel as though they're coming at you from an angle, and yet not right angles. The stage is completely open to the musical experience so that the sonic characteristics of every element of sound has the potential to come at you from all angles. I would say stage on this is good to excellent. It's not as vast as Shangri-La or HD800S, for example. Now we've brought Shangri-La and HD800S into the mix, let's talk about some comparisons. How does this sound versus some other headphones? Well, in regards to Utopia, as another flagship world's best dynamic headphones in my opinion, the tuning is far more pleasant on Valkyria for those genres it works for. It's not as bright and it's not as sometimes aggressive, leaning in the treble region. This can be mitigated with Utopia with tubes obviously, so bear that in mind. But where Utopia feels as though every element of sound is under the microscope, it's one of the most detailed headphones in the world where dynamics are concerned, this takes that to the next step and goes, yeah, I'll do that too, but I will present it in such a way where it feels as though it's part of the instrument itself and is very organic, rather than the telescope sort of, let's look under the lens. No, everything is like real life where drum skins, vocals, and those instruments I mentioned are concerned. It feels as though the Shangri-La is 1 kilogram and this is 100 kilograms, where weight and tonal density of equipment in the mix is concerned. Drums, for example. This is one of the most visceral, incisive, hard-attacking, hard-hitting headphones I have heard. And this definitely hits harder than Aperio for those genres like drums. And this definitely hits harder than, I would say, HE-1 for drums. It's unbelievable, but it requires the power to drive it properly. These twin pulse drivers, very complicated design. I will actually link a PDF down below so you can see how these are made. Is just very visceral. Unfortunately, this headphone is not one that you can have for every genre, but for the genres it's good at, I genuinely think it might be the best at, if not some of the best. If we're going to put it up against the $30,000 and $70,000 and $18,000 headphones, like we have back here, the Aperio and the Shangri-La, yeah, it definitely walks alongside them. It's unbelievable, but it's unbelievable how it can sound broken too. Simultaneously, it's very bizarre. The Aperio has far more reference tuning. I would say it's more get out of the way, doesn't provide any coloration. This does provide coloration. This is very warm in the mid-range. This has its own tonality, and it's definitely not a THX, for example, for some of you who know that sort of sound characteristic. Isn't definitely not that kind of sound characteristic. No, this is very rich. This is very warm. This is almost tubey, sort of like beautiful, beautiful tonality for those genres. It's wonderful. Versus the HE-1, I think these two walk together, not exactly on the same caliber, I would say, but unless drums is concerned, but they are both sort of warm leaning. They are both extraordinarily hard-hitting in the bass region, like ridiculously so. They are both intimate to good soundstage, so it's a private performance, unlike Aperio and Shangri-La. Yeah, I think it has more resemblance with the HE-1 than it does with Aperio and Shangri-La. And even then, it's not quite the same, but you get the vague idea that they're walking on the same path. I genuinely don't believe the Valkyria will feel too ashamed in company of Aperio and Shangri-La and HE-1. I have them all three here. Apart from the HE-1, that's the one we're trying to get hold of for in-depth analysis. I've only spent 4 days with that unit at Munich for a couple of hours at a time, so bear that in mind. Once that comes in, I'm hoping to actually do a complete shootout for you guys. Okay, let's do a comparison with a frequency response breakdown versus some of these headphones. Let's take the track Lilith from Monster Cat. I will link this one down below too. This is electronic music, but it will give us a good indicator of how the frequency response is actually performing for the majority of genres on Valkyria. So this is why I'm actually choosing this one. It's basically Achilles heel and its weak point. So on, for example, HE-1, it feels like a dynamic headphone, a planar headphone in an electrostatic driver with a speed and detail retrieval. Absolutely insane. No roll off in the sub bass. It's absolutely insane. And then we have Aperio, more of a reference sound, less warm, and yet as visceral, as deep reaching, and as impactful. And on Valkyria, you can hear it for this sub bass category in this for this electronic track, but it has absolutely no reach in regards to this 20 Hertz line. Not in the slightest, where that angry monster is growling at you, and its imaging is perfection right there. I mean, they all are, all of these three systems. It does not just appear in the stage, it's in the stage, and you can almost see in your mind's eye as if you could see all around the instrument itself, that synth. As we climb up to the mid bass, they all seem to be in line here. So Valkyria hits very hard, but the timbre is all out of whack because it doesn't quite seem to be tuned for this type of genre, and it sounds a bit cardboardy, unfortunately. And HE-1 slams like a truck. It's unbelievable. And Aperio is right beside it, giving you that exact kick of the tom-toms. Upper bass region, perfection on HE-1, obviously, and Aperio. For Valkyria, for this electronic track, it just seems to be all over the place, not quite there, not quite reaching, and some parts are spiky and some parts are dipped in the frequency response. In the upper bass, it's spiky, and in the mid bass, where it's spiky, and in the upper bass, where it seems to have dropped in the frequency response, and it's just giving a very incoherent sound. Mid-range is pretty good though, obviously. I don't think mid-range is a problem anywhere for anything, to be honest with you, until we get up to the upper mid-range. This is where there seems to be a huge dip for these types of genres, like a massive dip, and where HE-1 and Aperio seems to be just sublime. It's like you're in the room. It's insane. Treble region, beautiful extension on HE-1, obviously, on Aperio, obviously, and this is relaxed and beautiful, highly detailed, highly resolving, absolutely no problems whatsoever. Let's take Hans Zimmer's Pirates of the Caribbean live. This is a track for Valkyria that truly shines, obviously. Real instruments, orchestra, live music. Now, I did a shootout with the HE-1 versus Aperio. Check out the video here once you've seen this one. And obviously on the Aperio in-depth review following right behind it. Sub bass, absolutely no problems. As soon as that double bass and wind instruments hit, all three headphones, articulate, texturally rich, realistic. So absolutely no problems where sub bass is concerned for this genre where Valkyria shines, and obviously the other two are perfection. The mid bass and the upper bass region, tonally dense, extraordinarily weighty, impactful where drums are concerned, where attacks happen from the multitude of instruments on stage. Separation, articulation, textural information is very rich, very spaced out. Individual elements can be perceived without any problems for all of these instruments within this frequency band. Where mid-range is concerned, we have the same scenario again. Everything is very articulated, very, 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 very individually emphasized. Stage, Aperio, biggest, then HE-1 and Valkyria fighting it out. But the engaging nature of the mid-range of Valkyria, I think, is closer to HE-1, where it's more euphoric, than Aperio's, where it's reference. And in the treble region, when that crescendo happens and it feels as though things are distorting on most equipment, on Valkyria, on Aperio, and on HE-1. Everything is separated into its component elements, and you even get the artifacting of the track, the distortion of the microphone, and the ultra high-end detail of the high vocals and high-end of the wind instruments, all separated so that each of these elements can be separated beautifully without any discourse and discordance. This is where this headphone truly shines. So how does the Spirit Torino Valkyria portray itself in an organic manner that is not frequency response, textural information, timbre, and all of the other rest of the audiophile lexicon we use? How does this actually sound? What do you get when you put the Valkyria on the Sigphrid, the Z10E with Aperio DAC or Rockna WaveDream? Let me paint you a picture. It feels as though it's 9 p.m. at night, you're just stepping into the hotel, and it's that quiet atmosphere where it feels as though the hotel is beautifully acoustically treated. Not quite dead like the control room of a studio, but very, very, very quiet. A black background. Every element of sound is neither echoey, sibilant, or harsh. Smooth as silk. When jazz comes on this headphone, it feels as though it is nighttime. It is a neutral dark sound signature, but frequency response, textural information, tonality and weight and all of the rest of it disappears. And you are in this beautiful bar. Everybody's talking gently, as you get with some live jazz tracks where you can hear people in the background quietly carrying on their conversation. But when the drums kick in, it's not only that you hear drums. It feels as though you are sitting on the stool with the drummer right here. Every nuance of textural information of the hammers hitting the strings as the fingers run across the piano can be picked up. It feels as though you can hear the amplifiers within the driver's reproduction, where the band is putting their live instruments through the PA. You're not hearing the instruments through the drivers. You're hearing the instruments through the drivers of the PA. Then the microphone's picking up that sound and then being reproduced by these drivers of these headphones. It's so nuanced and layered, it's ridiculous. It's transparent in such a way that only a Shangri-La, Aperio and HE-1 can deliver. It's remarkable how resolving the Valkyria is. Its tonal density and weight, when you use a kick drum on a drum kit, it doesn't have any resonances and any echoes because of the blanket inside the drum. It thumps against the skin and it dies. There is a quick decay that does not cascade, for example, the way the trailing notes of a piano will reside, and you get every element of that. Stage is good to intimate to quite out there, especially in the depth, but not over encompassing. It feels as though it's a very private setting between you and the band. Incidentally, when instruments of this caliber play on a headphone like this, like jazz, acoustic, electroacoustic, classical and live music, the whole point of frequency response, treble, mid-range and bass utterly disappears. It feels as though they are real instruments, especially saxophones. It's gorgeous. I just can't believe a headphone like this just doesn't sound at all functional for electronic music. It just falls apart. It just doesn't work. That should give you a small taste of how these headphones are if I was to paint you a picture. So, conclusion. Let's talk about some caveats. Well, I mean, it's not all perfection like we've been talking about. It's the angels and demons of headphones. You have angels on one shoulder and demons on the other. So the attached cable is a detriment, I think, in my opinion. Even if it slightly boosts performance, which honestly, I mean, if Aperio can have detachable cables, Valkyria should too. So for me, that's a detriment. Second, it's the weight. These are very, very heavy headphones, and be careful because these cups rotate like this and you could have the titanium beautiful design touching each other and making a clicky noise and scratching each other. So you've got to be really careful with these. So the weight, for me personally, hour and a half, for some people 30 minutes, for some people 10 minutes, and for some people they can wear it all day. It's fortunately very, very comfortable, but it's very heavy. So those are the two aspects that I think for this caliber of headphone might be problematic for some people. There's one more thing, the pads are attached. Not only that, even if you replace the pads because they're damaged for some reason, you have to send it back because the pads are very crucial to the tuning and there's a specific way of attaching them and apparently you can't do it yourself. So bear that in mind as well. So it goes in line with a cable. If anything happens in regards to these two aspects, you really do have to send it back. My goodness, if you just love these two genres like opera, classical and metal, I think this can be your one and only headphone and you can leave the hobby permanently. It's absolutely divine. But if you're into hip hop, dance, pop and rap genres exclusively and you never listen to the other stuff, I don't think this is going to work for you. This is not your headphone because you're going to listen to it and go, why is this 12,000? And you will not understand why it's 12,000 because it's not designed for those genres. You will get occasional tracks that is truly superb on, but that's it. In conclusion, are the Valkyrias the best dynamic headphones in the world? Yes, for the genres it's good at. It's untouchable. It's absolutely mesmerizing. Is it worth 12 grand? Well, worth is very subjective. I think the work has gone into it, certainly. It'd be nice if it was cheaper, right? But not many of these are built, and we all know small companies, limited resources and limited technical know-how and time all cost significant amounts of money. Look at the HE-1 due to the marble and the construction. That's why it's 70 grand. I think the headphone part of itself can be a lot cheaper, but it's the time that it takes to build it. This has been one of the most wonderful experiences over the last month. Thank you, Mo. I really do appreciate it. It's been amazing. Let's do the scores. Build quality, 5 tigers out of 5. Comfort, 3 tigers out of 5 because I've had headphones as heavy that I can barely wear. These I can put on for a while. They're very comfortable. In regards to the fluffiness on the ears and the weight on the head, but the actual weight is very heavy, so bear that in mind. Sound quality. For the genres it's good at, 5 tigers out of 5. For the genres it's bad at, 2 tigers out of 5. Overall scoring. Spirit Torino Valkyria, 4 solid tigers out of 5. Absolutely amazing and absolutely frustrating. You too can support Convince Me Audio by joining our Patreon. Early reviews is uploaded to Patreon first. You get access to the private Telegram chat and you get access to my thoughts and impressions on equipment as they land for review, months before YouTube. And we get to discuss in depth on a variety of equipment what is actually happening during the review process. Otherwise, your like, your share, and your subscribe is all I need from you. Thank you so much for the support over the last 2.5 years. We are slowly building up momentum and we are slowly taking off. I really do appreciate every one of you. I will see you in the comment section down below. Until the next one, peace.